I wasn't looking for memories when I found the tape. I was looking for an extra set of keys. The house had already begun to feel unfamiliar, even though I grew up in it. After my parents died, it stopped being a home and became a collection of quiet rooms filled with objects that no longer had a purpose. Furniture stayed where it had always been, but nothing felt anchored anymore. The tape fell out from behind a drawer in my old bedroom dresser. It landed on the floor with a soft, dull sound, the kind of sound that usually doesn't mean anything. This one did. It was wrapped in a thin plastic grocery bag, the kind stores don't even use anymore. The label was written in my mother's handwriting, careful and neat. For when you're old enough. No name, no date. I stood there holding it, suddenly aware of how quiet the house was. The silence felt heavier than usual, like it was waiting for something to happen. My parents had been gone for almost a year. My father first. Cancer, fast and unforgiving. My mother followed 8 months later, not from illness exactly, but from forgetting how to live without him. Dementia took her in pieces. First her short-term memory, then her sense of time, and finally her ability to recognize the world around her. At the end, she looked at me with polite confusion, as if I were a distant relative she couldn't quite place. She never mentioned the tape. I carried it downstairs and sat in the living room, staring at the cassette player we hadn't used in decades. When I pressed play, the machine hummed like it was waking up from a long sleep. The tape hissed. Then I heard her voice. It was my mother, but not the version I remembered from the last few years. This was younger, stronger, steadier. The voice of someone who still believed time was on her side. "If you're listening to this," she said, "then I didn't protect you the way I hoped I would." My chest tightened. She paused, like she was choosing her words carefully, even though no one was there to interrupt her. She said she made the tape shortly after I turned 12. She said she planned to give it to me one day, but every year that passed made it harder. Truth, she explained, doesn't age well when it's kept hidden. It grows heavier, sharper. She told me about the year before I was born. She was 26, alone, pregnant, terrified. My biological father, the man I had believed was my father my entire life, was never meant to be part of the story. He left when she told him about the pregnancy, changed his number, disappeared without explanation. Then she met Robert. She described him slowly, like she was afraid I would judge him too quickly. He worked with his hands, fixed broken things, laughed easily, listened more than he spoke. He knew she was pregnant when they met. He knew the child wasn't his, and he stayed anyway. "He loved you before you were born," she said softly, and that scared me. She said Robert wanted to raise me as his own, wanted to be honest with me when I was old enough, wanted to build a life where nothing was hidden. But honesty felt dangerous to her. She was afraid I would grow up confused, afraid I would resent her, afraid I would choose him over her if I ever knew the truth. So she made a decision. She married someone else, a man who loved her, who loved me, who never asked questions she wasn't ready to answer. The man I called Dad. The tape ended abruptly, like she ran out of courage. I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall, replaying memories I suddenly wasn't sure how to interpret. My father's kindness, his patience, his quiet pride in me, and behind it all, a truth he never knew. There was another tape. This one was labeled with an address. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I drove to the address, my hands gripping the steering wheel harder than necessary. The house was small, set back from the road, with faded blue paint and a porch that leaned slightly to one side. I knocked. A man answered, older, thinner, his hair mostly gray, but his eyes were familiar in a way that made my breath catch. "You finally heard her," he said. Inside, his living room was filled with evidence of a life lived quietly. No photographs on the walls, just shelves, boxes, tapes, letters. He told me he never married, never had other children. Not because he was waiting, but because he didn't want to replace something that was never meant to be replaced. He showed me calendars with one date circled every year. My birthday. "She asked me not to contact you," he said. And I agreed. Because loving someone sometimes means stepping back. I asked him if he was angry. He shook his head. "I was sad," he said. "Anger fades. Sadness stays." Before I left, he handed me one more tape. "I made this for you," he said. In case she never found the courage. That night, I listened. He talked about me like he knew me, like he'd been watching my life from a distance, celebrating quietly, grieving silently. He said love doesn't always arrive with permission. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it whispers instead of shouts. When the tape ended, I cried for the first time since my parents died. Not because of what I lost, but because of what existed all along without my knowledge. I visit Robert now. We don't try to rewrite the past. We don't pretend time can be recovered. We just sit together and listen. Some truths don't break families. They finally tell them the truth about who they are.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos.